You know that moment when you're trying to be mature, cold, and in control, and your body decides to become its own main character. Yeah, she tries to hate the most smug client who's ever walked into her cafe. But he notices everything. The pause, the look, the slight tremble as she holds his cup. And he comes back, every day, like he's collecting her reactions. And honestly, he's really good at it. Violet Hayes had perfected the art of invisibility over the past 2 years. She moved through her small cafe like a ghost, efficient and detached, serving coffee with a polite smile that never quite reached her eyes. The Gilded Bean wasn't much, just a cozy corner shop in downtown Portland with mismatched chairs and walls the color of warm honey, but it was hers, safe, predictable, nothing like the glittering, treacherous world she'd escaped. "You're doing that thing again," Natalie announced from behind the espresso machine, her wild curls bouncing as she gestured dramatically with a milk frother. "That brooding artist thing where you stare out the window like you're in a tragic romance novel." Violet didn't look up from wiping down the counter. "I'm cleaning, Nat. It's called work. You should try it sometime." Ouch. Natalie pressed a hand to her chest in mock pain. "See, this is what happens when you haven't had decent sex in 2 years. You get mean." "I'm not mean, I'm focused. Focused on dying alone with 17 cats. I like cats. That's not the defense you think it is." Despite herself, Violet's lips twitched. Natalie had that effect, an irrepressible optimism that somehow made 2 years of friendship survivable, even enjoyable. They'd met when Natalie had wandered in looking for a job, armed with zero barista experience, but an infectious laugh that had customers coming back daily. The Tuesday morning rush had thinned to a trickle. Mrs. Chen sat in her usual corner doing a crossword puzzle. 2 college students occupied the window seats, laptops open, probably writing papers they should have finished weeks ago. The autumn sunlight filtered through the glass, painting everything in shades of amber. Peaceful, ordinary, exactly how Violet liked it. The door chimed. Violet glanced up reflexively and the world tilted sideways. He was tall, that was her first coherent thought. Easily 6'2", with dark hair that looked professionally tousled and a jawline that probably required its own insurance policy. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him like a second skin, the kind that whispered of exclusive tailors and obscene price tags. But it was his eyes that arrested her, a startling grey-blue that seemed to see through every carefully constructed wall she'd built. If this story is touching your heart, show your support. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Every action helps us keep bringing you new stories full of emotion. And he was looking directly at her. Violet's breath caught. Her hand froze mid-wipe. For 3 full seconds she simply stared, her brain short-circuiting like someone had unplugged her common sense and forgotten to plug it back in. A sharp elbow dug into her ribs. "Ow!" Violet jerked back to reality, glaring at Natalie, who was grinning like she'd won the lottery. "You were totally checking him out," Natalie hissed, not even pretending to whisper. "Like, full-on eye sex. I thought you might start drooling." "I was not," Violet's face flamed. "I was just looking." "Uh-huh." The way a starving person just looks at a steak. The man approached the counter, and Violet's pulse kicked into overdrive. This close, she could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, smell something expensive and woodsy that made her think of late nights and bad decisions. His mouth curved into a smile that was probably illegal in several states. "Morning." His voice was deep, smooth as aged whiskey. Violet's fingers tightened on her dishcloth. "Hi." The word came out embarrassingly breathless. She cleared her throat. Hello, welcome to the cafe. We have coffee." Natalie made a choking sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. The man's smile widened, amusement dancing in those impossible eyes. "Coffee sounds perfect. Black, please." "Black," Violet repeated stupidly. "Right. Black. No sugar, no cream, just black." "That's generally what black means, yes." Natalie was now openly giggling behind her hand. Violet wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. She was a 28-year-old business owner who'd survived heartbreak and rebuilt her entire life, and apparently one attractive man in an expensive suit had reduced her to the verbal equivalent of a malfunctioning robot. She turned to make his coffee, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for a cup. Behind her, she could feel him watching. The weight of his gaze made her skin prickle with awareness. "First time here?" Natalie asked, bless her interfering soul. It is. Just moved into an office a few blocks over. His voice was casual, friendly. Thought I'd explore the neighborhood. Well, you picked the right place. Vi makes the best coffee in Portland. Vi? Violet, she corrected, not turning around. My name is Violet. Violet. He said it slowly, like he was tasting each syllable. Pretty name. Her hand slipped, nearly overfilling the cup. She steadied herself, finished preparing his coffee with more care than strictly necessary, and finally turned to face him. Here you go. 1 black coffee. Their fingers brushed as he took the cup. It was nothing, a half-second of contact, but electricity shot up Violet's arm and settled somewhere in her chest. His eyes held hers for a beat too long. Thanks, Violet. He pulled out his wallet, extracting a 20 for a $4 coffee. Keep the change. That's too much. Consider it a tip for the excellent customer service. His smile turned teasing. And the entertainment. He knew. Of course he knew. Probably thought she was some pathetic small-town girl who'd never seen a decent-looking man before. Violet's spine straightened. We're not a charity case. Didn't say you were. He pocketed his wallet, completely unfazed by her sharp tone. Just appreciating good coffee and even better company. Before Violet could formulate a response, preferably one that didn't make her sound like an idiot, he turned and walked to a corner table. He sat down, pulled out a tablet, and proceeded to ignore both of them completely. Oh my God, Natalie breathed. He's into you. He's not into me, he's into coffee. He gave you a $16 tip. He's probably some rich businessman who doesn't understand the value of money. Orson Natalie drew out the word meaningfully. He thinks you're hot and wanted an excuse to come back. Violet snorted. Right, because I'm so irresistible in my coffee-stained apron and messy bun. You really need to work on your self-esteem, babe. But even as Violet returned to her tasks, she couldn't stop herself from stealing glances at the stranger in the corner. He sat with the easy confidence of someone who owned whatever room he occupied, his fingers moving across the tablet screen with casual efficiency. She told herself the flutter in her stomach was annoyance. Told herself she didn't care that his forearms were distractingly muscular where he'd rolled up his sleeves. Told herself that the way he occasionally looked up and caught her staring didn't make her heart skip. She was an excellent liar, just not to herself. When he finally stood to leave 40 minutes later, Violet pretended to be absorbed in reorganizing the pastry case. She didn't watch him walk to the door, didn't notice the way he moved with athletic grace. Definitely didn't feel a pang of disappointment when the door chimed his exit. He'll be back, Natalie predicted confidently. You don't know that. Want a bet? $20 says Prince Charming walks through that door again within 24 hours. Violet rolled her eyes. You're delusional. But when she went to clear his table, she found the coffee cup sitting on a napkin. Written in neat handwriting were 2 words and a phone number. Call me. Cameron. Her heart did something complicated in her chest. Absolutely not, she muttered, crumpling the napkin. She threw it in the trash, ignored Natalie's knowing smirk, and told herself she absolutely, definitely would not think about Cameron, whoever he was, for the rest of the day. That resolution lasted approximately 7 minutes. Cameron Brooks had built an empire on calculated risks and strategic patience. At 34, he owned a chain of boutique investment banks that catered to the kind of clients who summoned him to their yachts instead of offices. He'd navigated hostile takeovers, boardroom coups, and enough corporate warfare to write a manual on survival. None of it had prepared him for a 5'6" woman with guarded hazel eyes and a smile she wielded like a shield. He'd noticed the gilded bean on his morning run 3 days ago, a splash of warmth in the steel and glass canyon of Portland's financial district. The new office building his company had purchased sat 4 blocks away, and Cameron made it a point to know every asset in his territory, including, apparently, stubborn cafe owners who looked at him like he might be concealing a weapon. That first morning, he'd fully intended to grab coffee and leave, standard reconnaissance. Then she'd frozen behind the counter, those hazel eyes going wide, and something in his chest had shifted sideways. Now, 24 hours later, he was back. The door chimed his entrance at exactly 8:15. Cameron spotted Violet immediately, hard not to when his gaze had a magnetic pull toward her location. She stood at the espresso machine, her dark hair twisted into a knot that looked one strong breath away from collapsing. She wore jeans and a cream-colored sweater that should have been unremarkable, but somehow made his fingers itch to touch. She glanced up, saw him, and her entire body went rigid. Bingo. Cameron bit back a smile and approached the counter. The curly-haired woman, Natalie he'd learned yesterday from shameless eavesdropping, spotted him first. Her face split into a grin that spelled trouble. Well, well, look who's back. Violet's head whipped around. For half a second, something that might have been pleasure flickered across her face before she locked it down behind cool professionalism. "Welcome back," she said, her tone carefully neutral. "The usual? You remember my order. Black coffee isn't exactly complicated." "Neither am I." He leaned against the counter, watching her eyes narrow. "Despite what you might think, I don't think anything about you." Liar. Color bloomed in her cheeks, a fascinating pink that made him wonder where else she blushed. "Excuse me? You threw away my number," Cameron said conversationally. "But you fished it out of the trash 20 minutes later. Natalie told me." Violet's jaw dropped. She spun toward her friend, betrayal written all over her face. "You did not." Natalie held up her hands, not looking remotely apologetic. "He asked, what was I supposed to do, lie?" "Yes. Where's the fun in that?" Cameron was thoroughly enjoying this. "For what it's worth, I'm flattered you kept it." "I threw it away again," Violet shot back, "after taking a photo." "I did not." She stopped, realizing the trap. "You're making assumptions." "Am I wrong?" The silence stretched just long enough to confirm his suspicion. Cameron's smile widened. Violet made a sound of pure frustration and turned to make his coffee with more force than strictly necessary. She slammed the portafilter into place, ground the beans with excessive vigor, and generally treated the espresso machine like it had personally offended her. Cameron found it absolutely adorable. "You know," he said mildly, "if you're angry at me, taking it out on expensive equipment seems counterproductive." "I'm not angry." "Right. Just passionately aggressive toward coffee grounds." Natalie laughed so hard she had to grab the counter for support. Violet shot them both a glare that could have stripped paint. She finished his coffee in thunderous silence and shoved it across the counter with enough force to slosh a bit over the rim. $4. Cameron handed her another 20. "No." She pushed it back. $4. "I'm tipping for exceptional service." "You're being condescending." "I'm being generous." "There's a difference." "I don't want your money." "Good thing it's not about what you want then." They stared at each other across the counter, the air between them crackling with tension that had nothing to do with coffee and everything to do with the fact that Cameron wanted to kiss the stubborn set of her mouth, and Violet looked like she wanted to throw hot coffee in his face. Natalie cleared her throat loudly. "Should I give you two some privacy? Maybe a boxing ring?" "No," Violet snapped. "Yes," Cameron said simultaneously. Violet's eyes flashed. "You're impossible. You're difficult. You're arrogant. You're defensive. I have excellent reasons to be defensive. Name one. You're a—" She stopped herself, clearly biting back something she'd regret. Her chest heaved with barely suppressed irritation, and Cameron couldn't help tracking the movement before returning to her face. Her eyes had followed his gaze. The pink in her cheeks deepened to red. "Don't," she warned. "Don't what?" "Don't look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you're... like..." She gestured helplessly, apparently unable to articulate whatever accusation she'd been building. Cameron leaned forward, dropping his voice to something private. "Like, I'm interested? Because I am. Very interested." Violet's breath hitched audibly. For a moment, just a moment, she looked at him without all those walls, and Cameron saw straight through to the want she was trying so hard to hide. It mirrored his own with startling intensity. Then she blinked, and the barriers slammed back into place. "Your coffee's getting cold," she said flatly. Cameron recognized a dismissal when he heard one. He picked up his cup, considered pushing, and decided strategic retreat was the better play. This wasn't a battle he'd win in a day. "See you tomorrow, Violet. I'm not going to sleep with you." The bluntness caught him off guard. Cameron paused halfway to his usual table and turned back. "I don't recall asking." "You didn't have to. Men like you always ask eventually." "Men like me. Rich, confident, used to getting what you want." There was something bitter in her tone that made Cameron study her more carefully. Someone had hurt her, badly, and that someone had probably checked all the same boxes she was trying to pin on him. His amusement faded into something more serious. I'm not whoever you think I am. You don't know what I think. Then enlighten me. Violet crossed her arms, her expression hardening into something that looked almost like pain. I think you're bored. I think this, she gestured between them, is entertainment. A game. Small-town cafe owner. Probably seems like a fun distraction before you move on to someone more appropriate. The accusation stung more than it should have. Cameron set his coffee down carefully. You're wrong, he said quietly. About all of it. Am I? Yes. He held her gaze, willing her to see the truth in his words. I don't play games with people's feelings, and you're not a distraction. Then what am I? The question hung between them, weighted with challenge and something that might have been hope. Cameron smiled slowly. I'm still figuring that out, but I'm enjoying the process. Before Violet could respond, he picked up his coffee and walked to his table, leaving her staring after him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Natalie appeared at Violet's shoulder, her voice pitched low enough that Cameron had to strain to hear. Okay, I take it back. He's not just into you. He's gone for you. He doesn't even know me. Pretty sure that's the point, babe. He wants to. Violet shook her head, but Cameron didn't miss the way her eyes kept drifting toward him as she went about her work. He caught her looking 3 times in the next hour. Each time, instead of looking away, he smiled. Each time she blushed and pretended she'd been looking at something else. By the time he left, Cameron had formed a plan. Violet Hayes was scared, stubborn, and convinced he was bad news. He was going to prove her wrong. Slowly, patiently, and with enough persistence that she'd eventually have to admit what they both already knew. This thing between them? It wasn't going away. Tomorrow, he decided, he'd arrive 15 minutes earlier. Cameron kept his promise. For the next week, he appeared at the Gilded Bean every morning at precisely 8 o'clock, ordered black coffee, and proceeded to make Violet's carefully controlled life utterly chaotic. Day 3, he arrived wearing glasses, dark-framed things that made him look like a dangerously attractive professor. Violet walked directly into a chair and nearly face-planted into a customer's lap. Smooth, Cameron commented from the counter, not bothering to hide his amusement. Shut up, Violet muttered, her face burning as she righted herself. The floor's uneven. The floor's been the same for 2 years, Natalie helpfully pointed out. What's uneven is your ability to function around hot men in glasses. Traitor. Day 5, he brought a friend, a tall, sandy-haired man with an easy smile and the unmistakable bearing of someone who spent too much time in courtrooms. He introduced himself as Julian Hayes, attorney at law and apparently Cameron's closest friend since college. So you're the reason Cam's been insufferably cheerful lately, Julian said, shaking Violet's hand with genuine warmth. I have to say, you're exactly as advertised. Violet frowned. Advertised? Beautiful, sharp-tongued, and thoroughly unimpressed by his usual charm. Julian grinned. He's been talking about you non-stop for a week. Cameron shot his friend a look that promised retribution. Julian has a death wish. Ignore everything he says. On the contrary, Violet said sweetly, I'd like to hear more. I like her, Julian announced. Natalie, right? Want to grab a table and watch them argue? I've got an hour before my next deposition. Natalie practically sparkled with delight. Thought you'd never ask. And just like that, Violet and Cameron had an audience for their daily battle of wits. You're doing this on purpose, Violet accused later that morning, after Cameron had made his 3rd deliberately provocative comment about how much he enjoyed watching her work. Doing what? Trying to get a reaction out of me. Cameron leaned against the counter, all lazy confidence and knowing eyes. Is it working? No. Liar. You're infuriating. You're beautiful when you're angry. Violet's jaw dropped. Did you seriously just use that line? Did it work? Absolutely not. Then why are you blushing? I'm not. Violet caught sight of her reflection in the espresso machine. Her cheeks were indeed pink. Damn it. It's warm in here. It's 65 degrees. I'm working. I get warm when I work. Uh-huh. His smile was pure sin. Keep telling yourself that, sweetheart. The endearment sent a shiver down her spine that Violet absolutely refused to acknowledge. Don't call me sweetheart. What should I call you? Violet works fine. Too formal. He pretended to consider. How about Vi? Natalie calls me Vi. Guess we have something in common then. We have nothing in common. We both like coffee. Everyone likes coffee. We both find each other attractive, Violet sputtered. I never said... You didn't have to. Cameron's voice dropped lower, intimate despite the public setting. Your body language is very communicative. My body language is telling you to leave me alone. Funny. I'm reading it completely differently. From their corner table, Natalie and Julian were watching like it was prime-time television. Natalie gave her a thumbs up. Julian just looked entertained. Violet wanted to murder all three of them. Day 7 changed everything. Cameron walked in at 8 o'clock, wearing a fitted athletic shirt that left absolutely nothing to the imagination. Violet, who'd been carrying a tray of fresh pastries, stopped so abruptly that physics took over. The tray tilted. She overcorrected. Her foot caught on absolutely nothing. She went down hard, pastries flying in an arc worthy of a slapstick comedy. Violet! Cameron vaulted over the counter, actually vaulted, like some kind of action hero, and was kneeling beside her before she could process what happened. Are you okay? Did you hit your head? His hands were on her arms, gentle but urgent, his face creased with genuine concern. This close, Violet could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, count the different shades of grey in his eyes, smell that woody scent that made her brain malfunction. I'm fine, she managed, acutely aware that she was sitting in a pile of croissants and he was touching her, and approximately 12 customers were witnessing her humiliation. Just clumsy. You're sure? He helped her up, his hand steady at her elbow. Nothing hurts? Everything hurt. Mostly her pride. I'm fine. Really? Cameron studied her face for a long moment, then glanced down at his shirt. When he looked back up, understanding dawned. Did you trip because of... No. Because if my shirt was distracting, it wasn't. I could take it off, you know, to help with your balance issues. Violet's brain short-circuited. You are not taking your shirt off in my cafe. Our customers might enjoy it. He was grinning now, that insufferable knowing grin that made her want to kiss him and kill him in equal measure. I could charge admission, boost your revenue. You're impossible. You've mentioned that before. He reached out and plucked a piece of croissant from her hair with gentle fingers. I think you secretly like impossible. Their faces were inches apart. Violet's heart hammered against her ribs. For one insane moment, she thought he might kiss her right there, surrounded by pastry carnage and an audience of increasingly delighted onlookers. Instead, he stepped back, that infuriating smile still playing on his lips. Clean up on aisle 5, Natalie called out cheerfully. And Vi, maybe next time he comes in post-workout you should just sit down preemptively, save us all the suspense. I hate all of you, Violet announced to no one in particular. Julian raised his coffee cup. For what it's worth, that was the most entertaining thing I've seen all week. Cameron helped her gather the scattered pastries, his movements efficient despite the clear amusement radiating from him. When they both reached for the same croissant, their hands touched. He didn't pull away, neither did she. Violet, he said quietly, his voice suddenly serious. Go to dinner with me. No. Why not? Because you're dangerous, tempting, everything I promised myself to avoid. Not my type. What's your type? Not you. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a barely there touch that sent electricity up her arm. Then why can't you stop looking at me? Violet snatched her hand back. I can stop any time I want. Prove it. Fine. She stood, brushing croissant crumbs from her jeans with as much dignity as she could muster. Watch me not look at you for the rest of the day. I'll be counting. Do that. She made it exactly 47 minutes before her eyes betrayed her. Cameron was watching. Of course he was watching. He winked. Violet grabbed a dishcloth and threw it at his head. He caught it one-handed, laughing. Game on. The shoulder thing started on a Tuesday. Violet was restocking the pastry case, completely absorbed in arranging lemon tarts in what she considered an aesthetically pleasing pattern. She heard the door chime but didn't look up. The morning rush had passed, and she was enjoying the rare moment of peace. Warm lips pressed against her bare shoulder, just where her oversized sweater had slipped down. Violet jolted so violently she nearly knocked over the entire tray of tarts. A full-body shiver raced from the point of contact, straight down her spine, raising goosebumps across her arms and making her breath catch audibly. Cameron stepped back, looking entirely too pleased with himself. Morning, Vi. She spun around, her hand flying to her shoulder. What the hell was that? A greeting. He smiled that devastating smile. You were ignoring me. So you just... Words failed her. Her shoulder was still tingling. Kissed your shoulder, he finished helpfully. You have very nice shoulders. Has anyone ever told you that? That's not... You can't just... Violet's brain was malfunctioning again. She took a breath, trying to regain some composure. That's completely inappropriate. You didn't like it. The problem was, she had liked it. Too much. Her body's reaction had been immediate and embarrassingly obvious. That's not the point. What is the point? The point is boundaries, personal space, basic human decency. Cameron leaned against the counter, utterly unbothered by her outrage. Did you want me to stop? Yes, her rational mind screamed. No, her traitorous body whispered. Yes, she said firmly. Liar. I'm not. You're doing that thing where you lie, but your body tells the truth. His eyes held hers, warm and knowing. You shivered, Violet. Head to toe, that's not disgust. Heat flooded her cheeks. You're reading too much into an involuntary physical reaction. Am I? He pushed off the counter, taking a step closer. Not touching, just close. Want to test that theory? Stay away from my shoulders, if you insist. But he didn't insist. And 2 days later, it happened again. Violet was wiping down tables, her mind wandering to the supplier invoice she needed to review later. She sensed movement behind her, but assumed it was Natalie. Those lips found her shoulder again, lingering a fraction longer this time. The shiver was even more intense. Violet's knees actually went weak. You did it again, she accused, whirling to face him. Cameron held up his hands in mock innocence. Couldn't help myself, you looked distracted. So you molested my shoulder. Molested is a strong word. I prefer greeted affectionately. I prefer assault and battery. If you really want me to stop, I will. His expression turned serious. But you have to actually mean it, Violet, not just say it because you think you should. The sincerity in his voice threw her off balance. This was the problem with Cameron. Just when she'd built up a good head of indignant steam, he'd say something genuine and all her defenses would wobble. She faltered. It's confusing. What is? You. This. Whatever this is we're doing. I'm pursuing you, Cameron said simply. You're pretending you don't want to be pursued while secretly enjoying every minute of it. That's true. Violet wanted to deny it, wanted to throw something at his head again and tell him to take his arrogance and his perfect jawline and his shoulder-kissing habit somewhere else. Instead, she heard herself say, "One more chance." His eyebrows rose. "Sorry, you get one more chance to kiss my shoulder. If I don't react, you have to stop. Forever." It was possibly the stupidest challenge she'd ever issued. But the competitive glint in Cameron's eyes made her pulse race in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "You're on." He circled around behind her, his movements deliberately slow. "But fair warning, I don't plan to lose." Violet steeled herself, determined to remain perfectly still and unaffected. She focused on her breathing, on keeping her muscles relaxed, on not giving him the satisfaction of... His lips touched her shoulder. But this time he didn't pull away quickly. This time he lingered, his mouth warm and soft against her skin. She felt the faint brush of his breath, the gentle pressure of his fingers steadying her elbow. The shiver that ran through her was so powerful, she actually gasped. Cameron's quiet laugh ghosted across her skin. "I win." "That was cheating," Violet managed, her voice embarrassingly breathy. "That was strategy." He stepped around to face her, satisfaction written all over his face. "Admit it, you like when I do that." She couldn't, wouldn't. "You're impossible. We've established that. What we haven't established is why you keep fighting this." "Because you're rich and powerful, and exactly like the man who broke me," Violet thought. "Because I swore I'd never let someone like you close enough to hurt me again. Because you terrify me in ways I don't know how to articulate." Out loud, she said, "Because you're annoying." Try again. "Because you're presumptuous." Getting warmer. "Because I don't trust men who think they can have whatever they want just because they want it." There. The truth. Raw and unfiltered. Cameron's expression softened. "I don't think that. And I don't want whatever. I want you. There's a difference. Men like you always say that. I'm not men like me. I'm just me, Cameron, The guy who looks forward to getting his coffee every morning because it means seeing you. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with gentle fingers. The guy who knows you take your own coffee with 2 sugars and a splash of vanilla creamer. Who knows you reorganize the pastry case when you're stressed. Who knows you hum while you work when you think no one's listening. Violet's heart clenched. You notice that. I notice everything about you. The moment stretched between them, weighted with possibility. Violet felt her resolve crumbling, felt herself leaning toward him like a plant towards sunlight. Then the door chimed, shattering the spell. A cluster of college students tumbled in, laughing and loud, and the real world crashed back. Violet stepped away, creating distance, rebuilding her walls brick by brick. I should get back to work, she said quietly. Violet, please. Cameron studied her face, then nodded slowly. Okay, but we're not done with this conversation. We might be. We're definitely not. He headed toward his usual table, then paused and looked back. And Vi, the shoulder thing? That's not stopping. You had your test. I won. Despite everything, her confusion, her fear, her determination to keep him at arm's length, Violet felt her lips curve into an unwilling smile. You're insufferable. You keep saying that, like it's a bad thing. Later, when she was closing up and found another napkin with his phone number and a simple message, dinner, Saturday. Say yes? She stood there for a long moment, staring at his handwriting. Natalie appeared at her shoulder. You're going to say yes, right? I don't know. Vi, come on. The man memorized your coffee order and your stress tics. He jumps over counters when he thinks you're hurt. He's been coming here every single day for 2 weeks just to see you. Exactly. 2 weeks. He barely knows me. So let him get to know you better. That's literally what dating is for. Violet worried her bottom lip. What if this is a mistake? What if it's not? That night, lying in bed, Violet picked up her phone 17 times before finally typing out a message. Saturday, 7 p.m. But I'm driving myself. His response came within seconds. I'll text you the address. And Violet? What? Can't wait. Neither could she. That was the terrifying part. Saturday arrived with the inevitability of a looming disaster. Violet spent the entire day in a state of controlled panic, changing outfits so many times that Natalie, who'd planted herself on Violet's bed like a one-woman fashion tribunal, started keeping a tally. That's number 7, Natalie announced, as Violet emerged from the closet in an emerald wrap dress. And before you ask, yes, it looks amazing, but so did the last 3. The black one made me look like I was going to a funeral. You're being dramatic. The burgundy one was trying too hard. Also dramatic. And the Vi. Natalie stood up, placing both hands on Violet's shoulders. You look gorgeous. Cameron's going to take one look at you and forget how to form sentences. Now stop overthinking and get dressed before you're late. Violet checked her reflection one more time. The emerald dress hugged her curves without being obvious, the neckline modest but flattering. Her dark hair fell in loose waves past her shoulders. She'd kept her makeup simple, just enough to enhance without screaming, trying too hard. I can't believe I'm doing this, she muttered. I can't believe it took him 3 weeks to convince you. Natalie handed her a clutch purse. Now go. Have fun. Maybe let him kiss you. Definitely don't think about your ex. I'm not. You've been thinking about your ex all day. I can see it on your face. Natalie's expression softened. Cameron's not him, Vi. Give him a chance to prove that. The restaurant Cameron had chosen was exactly the kind of place Violet had expected. Intimate, expensive, with soft lighting that made everything look like a painting. A hostess in a crisp black dress led her to a corner table where Cameron was already waiting. He stood when he saw her, and Violet's breath caught. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him like a dream, the jacket emphasizing his broad shoulders, the shirt open at the collar revealing a hint of throat that made her mouth go dry. But it was his expression that stopped her, pure, unfiltered appreciation mixed with something deeper that made her heart stutter. Violet. Her name was almost reverent. You're stunning. Thanks. She smoothed her dress nervously. You clean up pretty well yourself. His smile was slow and devastating. I have my moments. He pulled out her chair, waiting until she was seated before returning to his own seat. The gesture was old-fashioned but oddly charming, making Violet feel simultaneously treasured and completely out of her depth. So, Cameron said, his eyes never leaving her face. First real date. No coffee counter between us. How does it feel? Terrifying, Violet admitted before she could stop herself. His expression softened. Good terrifying or bad terrifying? I'm not sure yet. Fair enough. He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of his palm. We can take this as slow as you need. The waiter appeared, reciting specials in a voice that suggested he'd performed this speech 1,000 times. Violet tried to focus, but her mind was a chaotic mess of nerves and awareness, and the scent of Cameron's cologne drifting across the table. The salmon sounds good, she said, choosing randomly. I'll have the same, Cameron told the waiter, then ordered a bottle of wine that Violet suspected cost more than her monthly grocery budget. When the waiter left, Cameron leaned back, that familiar teasing glint returning to his eyes. You have no idea what you just ordered, do you? I know it's salmon. You didn't hear a single word of that description. Violet felt her cheeks heat. I was distracted. By what? Your face. The words were out before she could stop them. Cameron's eyebrows shot up, surprise and delight warring across his features. My face, he repeated slowly. Forget I said that. Absolutely not. I'm memorizing this moment. He grinned. Violet Hayes, admitted to being distracted by my face. This is going in my autobiography. You're insufferable, and you're adorable when you're flustered. The waiter returned with wine, performing an elaborate tasting ritual that Cameron waved through with practiced ease. Violet accepted her glass gratefully, taking a sip that was probably too large to be sophisticated. So tell me something, Cameron said, swirling his own wine thoughtfully. What made you say yes? After weeks of turning me down, what changed? Violet considered lying, deflecting, making a joke. Instead, she found herself being honest. Natalie pointed out that I was letting fear make my decisions instead of making them myself. Smart friend. Sometimes too smart for her own good. Violet traced the rim of her glass. What made you so persistent? You could have any woman in Portland, why me? Because you're the only one who looked at me like I was a problem to be solved, instead of a prize to be won. His voice was quiet, sincere. You challenged me, made me work for every smile, every laugh, and when you finally let your guard down, even just a little, it felt like, I don't know, winning something that actually mattered. Violet's throat tightened. She reached for her wineglass, misjudged the distance and knocked it over. Red wine spread across the white tablecloth like a crime scene. Violet watched in horror as it dripped onto her dress, staining the emerald fabric dark. Oh my God! She grabbed her napkin, dabbing uselessly at the spreading stain. I'm so sorry. I'm such a disaster. I can't believe I just... Violet. Cameron was around the table in seconds, kneeling beside her chair with his own napkin. It's fine. It's just wine. It's all over my dress, all over the table. The waiter's going to think you're human. He took her hand gently, stilling her frantic movements. Breathe. It's okay. This is the worst first date ever. I disagree. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, the touch soothing. The worst first date would be boring. This is memorable. Despite her mortification, Violet laughed, a shaky, embarrassed sound. You're just saying that. I'm really not. He signaled the waiter with an ease that came from years of expensive restaurants. But if it makes you feel better, on my worst first date, I spilled an entire basket of bread rolls. They rolled under 3 different tables. I crawled after them. Violet stared at him. You did not. I absolutely did. I was 22 and trying to impress a girl from my economics class. She laughed so hard she snorted wine out of her nose. He grinned. We never went on a second date, but the memory still makes me smile. The waiter appeared with fresh linens and remarkable discretion. Within minutes, the table was reset. Violet's dress had been treated with some kind of magic solution, and it was like the spill had never happened, except for the fact that Violet couldn't stop blushing. I promise I'm not usually this clumsy, she said, when they were alone again. You're usually this clumsy around me, Cameron corrected. Which I find extremely flattering. That's a very generous interpretation. I prefer to think positively, he raised his fresh glass of wine, to first dates. May they be messy, memorable, and the beginning of something worth remembering. Violet clinked her glass against his, careful not to spill this time. To not crawling under tables for bread rolls. To learning from past mistakes. Their eyes met over the rims of their glasses, and something shifted. The nervousness didn't disappear entirely, but it settled into something manageable, something that felt almost like excitement. Maybe, Violet thought as Cameron launched into a story about Julian's disastrous attempt at cooking, maybe Natalie was right. Maybe Cameron wasn't her past repeating itself. Maybe he was something entirely new. The thought was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. Dinner passed in a blur of conversation and laughter that Violet hadn't expected. Cameron was funny, genuinely funny, not just charming, with a self-deprecating humor that undercut his natural confidence in a way that made him devastatingly appealing. He told her about growing up in Seattle, the youngest of 3 brothers, who'd made his childhood a series of calculated survival exercises. About his first business venture at 16, buying and reselling vintage watches, which had failed spectacularly when he'd accidentally sold his father's Rolex. "He still brings it up at Thanksgiving," Cameron said, shaking his head ruefully. 20 years later, and I'm still the son who sold his inheritance for beer money." "Did you actually use it for beer money?" "I was 16. Of course I did," he grinned. "Terrible beer too, cheap stuff that tasted like regret." Violet found herself relaxing, the wine and his easy manner dissolving her nervousness. She told him about opening the Gilded Bean, about the terrifying first year when she'd nearly gone bankrupt 3 times and survived on ramen and determination. "Natalie showed up during month 11, Violet said, smiling at the memory. "I'd put up a help wanted sign more out of desperation than actual hope I could afford to hire someone. She walked in, announced she had 0 experience but made excellent conversation, and I hired her on the spot." "Best business decision you ever made?" "Second best." Violet caught herself. The first was not giving up when everything seemed impossible. Cameron's expression turned serious. "I admire that. Building something from nothing. It takes real courage. Or stupidity, I'm still not sure which." "Courage," he said firmly. "Definitely courage." The moment stretched between them, weighted with meaning. Violet looked away first, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. By the time dessert arrived, a chocolate creation that defied physics, Violet had forgotten to be nervous. She was simply enjoying herself, enjoying Cameron. The realization was both wonderful and unsettling. "You're thinking too hard again," Cameron observed. "I can see the wheels turning." "I'm just—" Violet searched for words. "Surprised." "By what?" "This. You. How easy it is to talk to you." She picked at her dessert. "I expected—" "Expected what?" "I don't know. Something different." "Someone different." Cameron set down his fork. "What did someone do to make you so convinced that men like me are all the same?" The question was gentle but direct. Violet felt her walls trying to slam back into place, felt the instinct to deflect and change the subject. Instead, she heard herself say, "His name was Marcus." Cameron waited, not pushing, just present. "We met 3 years ago. He was older, successful, charming, said all the right things about the future we'd build together." Violet's laugh was hollow. "Turned out he was building that future with someone else, someone more appropriate for a man of his position. He cheated for 8 months while talking about marriage and telling me I was the only one who mattered." She met Cameron's eyes, seeing something dark and angry flash through them. "So yes, I have trust issues with successful, charming men who say all the right things. I would never—" "That's what he said too." The silence that followed was heavy. Violet regretted the words immediately. This was supposed to be a nice evening, and she'd just dumped her emotional baggage all over the dessert course. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "That wasn't fair. You're not him. I know you're not him. I just—" "Violet?" Cameron reached across the table, taking her hand. His grip was warm, solid, real. "Don't apologize for being honest. And don't apologize for being careful with your heart. Someone hurt you. Badly. You have every right to be cautious. But it's not fair to you. Let me decide what's fair to me." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "I'm not afraid of your past or your walls or your very justified hesitation. I'm willing to prove I'm different, for as long as it takes." Violet's throat tightened. "Why?" "Because you're worth it." He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "And because when you smile, really smile, it's like watching the sun come out after a storm. That's very poetic for a banker." "I have hidden depths," he smiled. "Want to hear my worst poetry?" I wrote some truly terrible stuff in college. Absolutely not. It involved comparing a girl's eyes to mutual funds. It was a metaphor for growth and investment. Violet laughed, the tension breaking. That's horrible. I know, she very kindly told me to stick to finance. The rest of dinner passed easier, the honesty clearing the air between them. When Cameron finally signaled for the check, Violet felt an odd mixture of disappointment and relief. The evening was ending, but she'd survived. More than survived. She'd enjoyed it. I'm driving you home, Cameron said as they walked to the parking lot. I have my car, which you can pick up tomorrow. It's dark, I'd worry, and this is not negotiable. Violet wanted to argue on principle. Instead, she found herself saying, okay. His car was exactly what she'd expected. Sleek, expensive, probably cost more than her entire cafe. She slid into the passenger seat, hyper-aware of the enclosed space, the intimacy of being alone with him. Cameron drove with the same confident ease he did everything else, one hand on the wheel, the other resting casually on the gear shift. Violet watched his profile, illuminated by passing streetlights, and felt her heart do that complicated flutter again. When they pulled up to her apartment building, Violet's pulse kicked into overdrive. This was the moment, the end-of-date moment where decisions were made and boundaries tested. Cameron walked her to her door, his hand light on her lower back. Violet fumbled with her keys, dropped them, cursed under her breath, and generally made a spectacle of her nerves. Violet. She looked up. He was standing close enough that she could see the different shades of grey in his eyes, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from him. I had a really good time tonight, he said softly. Even the wine spill. Especially the wine spill. He lifted his hand, his fingers gentle as they tilted her chin up. Violet's breath caught. This was it. He was going to kiss her. And despite every warning voice in her head, she wanted him to. Cameron leaned down and Violet's eyes fluttered closed. She felt the soft press of his lips against her forehead. Tender, deliberate, achingly gentle. Then he stepped back. Violet's eyes flew open, confusion and disappointment warring in her chest. You're not... When I kiss you properly, Cameron said, his voice rough with restraint, it won't be because the moment's right, or because it's what you expect at the end of a date. It'll be when you're completely certain. When there's no fear in your eyes, no hesitation in your touch, when you want it as much as I do. You're not there yet, and that's okay. He brushed his thumb across her cheek. I can wait, Violet. For you, I can wait as long as it takes. He turned to leave, and Violet found herself calling out, Cameron? He paused, looking back. Thank you, she said softly. For tonight. For everything. His smile was warm enough to feel from 6 feet away. First of many, if you'll let it be. Violet watched him drive away, her hand pressed to her forehead where she could still feel the ghost of his kiss. Inside her apartment, she leaned against the door, her heart pounding, her mind racing. Natalie was going to lose her mind when she heard about this. More importantly, Violet was losing her own mind, because for the first time in 3 years she wanted to let someone in, and that terrified her more than anything. The Monday after their date, Cameron walked into the Gilded Bean at 8 o'clock sharp. Violet's traitorous heart leapt at the sight of him, all tailored suit and that devastating smile. Morning, beautiful, he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Violet's hands trembled slightly as she reached for a cup. Morning. He noticed, of course. Noticed everything. His smile widened. Nervous? No. You're biting your lip. She released her lip immediately. I'm concentrating. On coffee you've made 1,000 times. On not throwing hot liquid at your smug face. Cameron laughed, rich and warm. There's my girl. Thought you might have gotten soft on me after Saturday. Your girl. The casual possessiveness should have irritated her. Instead, it sent warmth flooding through her chest. Natalie appeared from the back room, took one look at them, and grinned like she'd won the lottery. Oh, good. You're both here. Julian and I are going out Thursday night. You two should come. That's not subtle, Violet muttered. I'm not trying to be subtle. I'm trying to orchestrate double dates. There's a difference. Natalie looked entirely unrepentant. So, Thursday? Cameron looked at Violet, one eyebrow raised in question. The ball was in her court. She should say no, should maintain distance, keep this casual, protect herself. Okay, she heard herself say instead. The smile Cameron gave her was worth every ounce of fear. Over the next 2 weeks, a pattern emerged. Cameron came every morning, stayed for an hour, worked from his corner table. The shoulder kisses continued, random, unpredictable, devastating. Violet stopped protesting, stopped pretending she didn't melt every single time. One morning, she was reaching for supplies on a high shelf when his lips found that sensitive spot. The shiver was so intense, she nearly dropped the entire stack of napkins. "One day," she said breathlessly, turning to face him, "you're going to give me a heart attack." What a way to go. His eyes danced with mischief. They'll write songs about it. They'll write restraining orders. Potato, potato. But the teasing had an edge now, a heat that made the air between them crackle. Violet caught him staring at her mouth more than once. She was absolutely staring at his. Thursday's double date was chaotic from the start. Julian and Natalie had discovered a shared love of terrible puns and were engaged in an escalating war that had Cameron and Violet exchanging long-suffering looks across the table. "What do you call a bear with no teeth?" Julian asked with the solemnity of someone delivering a legal argument. "Don't encourage him," Cameron warned. "A gummy bear," Julian and Natalie announced in unison, then dissolved into laughter. "We've created a monster," Violet said. "Two monsters," Cameron corrected. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "Want to escape?" Yes. She wanted to escape with him, to somewhere private where she could stop pretending she didn't want his hands on her. That's rude to our friends. Our friends are currently debating whether a scarecrow can win an Outstanding Performance Award. "Because he's outstanding in his field," Natalie crowed. Violet looked at Cameron. "Let's go." They escaped to a small park nearby, the city lights painting everything in gold. Cameron shrugged off his jacket and draped it around her shoulders without asking. "You don't have to." "I know." He guided her to a bench. "I wanted to." They sat in comfortable silence, shoulders touching. Violet could feel the warmth of him through her clothes, could smell that woodsy scent that made her head spin. "Can I ask you something?" Cameron's voice was quiet. "Depends on the question. Why did you really say yes to dinner, the first time?" Violet considered lying, deflecting, chose honesty instead. "Because I was tired of being afraid, and because some part of me wanted to see if you were real." "Am I?" She turned to look at him. "I'm starting to think so." His hand found hers, fingers threading through hers with easy intimacy. "Good. Because this? Us? It's pretty real for me, Violet." Her heart hammered. "Cameron, I know you're scared. I know you have reasons. But I need you to know something." He turned to face her fully, his free hand cupping her cheek. "I'm not going anywhere. You can push me away, test me, throw dishcloths at my head. I'm still going to be here every morning, every time you need me." "That's insane." "Probably." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "But I'm okay with insane if it means I get to keep seeing you smile." Violet felt tears prick her eyes. "You're making this very hard." "What am I making hard?" "Keeping my distance, protecting myself." "Then stop." His voice was rough, urgent. "Stop protecting yourself from me. I'm not the enemy, Violet. I'm the guy who's falling for you and really, really hoping you might be falling too." The confession hung between them, enormous and terrifying and wonderful. "I'm terrified," Violet whispered. "Me too." "You? You're never scared." "I'm scared every day that you'll realize you can do better. That someone less pushy, less arrogant, less obsessed with your shoulders will come along, and you'll forget about me." Despite everything, Violet laughed. "Obsessed with my shoulders?" "Deeply obsessed. It's becoming a problem." She shifted closer, her free hand coming up to rest against his chest. She could feel his heartbeat, rapid, matching her own. "I'm falling too," she admitted. "And it's terrifying, and I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, and I don't know how to do this without being afraid." "Then be afraid, but be afraid with me." His forehead touched hers. "We'll figure it out together." Violet closed her eyes, breathing him in. This moment felt fragile, precious, like something she needed to hold carefully or it might shatter. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay? Okay, I'll try. No more running. No more assuming the worst." Cameron's smile was radiant. "That's all I'm asking." They sat there for a long time, foreheads touching, hands clasped, the city humming around them. When they finally returned to find Natalie and Julian, their friends took one look at their joined hands and erupted in cheers. "Finally," Natalie shouted. "I thought I was going to have to lock you in a closet." "Don't give her ideas," Violet warned Cameron. Too late, Julian said cheerfully. She's already planning your wedding. But as Violet caught Cameron's eye and saw the warmth there, the promise, she thought maybe, just maybe, she was okay with that. Terrified, but okay. It was a start. 3 days later, Natalie conveniently forgot her keys to the cafe. Violet knew it was a setup the moment her phone rang at 7:30 in the evening. So funny story, Natalie said, not sounding remotely apologetic. I totally left my keys inside, and I really need them because I'm going to visit my mum tomorrow and her spare house key is on that ring and... Nat. And I know Cameron's probably still there working because he mentioned staying late and... You're a terrible liar. I'm an excellent friend. There's a difference. Natalie's grin was audible. Just go let yourself in and get my keys. What's the worst that could happen? Violet could think of several scenarios, all of which involved Cameron's shoulders and her complete loss of self-control. I hate you, she informed her friend. Love you too. Text me when you find my keys. The cafe was dark, except for the soft glow from the corner where Cameron had set up his laptop. He looked up when she entered, surprise and pleasure crossing his face. Violet, everything okay? Natalie forgot her keys, allegedly. She walked toward his table, hyper-aware of the empty cafe, the intimacy of being completely alone with him. I'm starting to think she's doing this on purpose. She definitely is. Cameron closed his laptop. Julian told me she's been planning Operation Get Them Alone for a week. Our friends are ridiculous. Our friends are invested in our happiness. He stood, moving around the table. Can't really blame them. He was close now, close enough that Violet had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. The air between them felt charged, electric. I should find those keys, she said, not moving. Probably. Natalie's waiting. She can wait a little longer. His hand came up, fingers trailing along her jaw. Violet's breath hitched. This was different from the shoulder kisses, more deliberate, more weighted with intention. Cameron, she whispered, tell me to stop and I will. She should. Should maintain boundaries. Keep some distance between wanting and having. Don't stop. His smile was slow, devastating. Dangerous words, sweetheart. I'm feeling dangerous. He laughed, the sound low and rough. Then his hands were in her hair, tilting her face up, and his mouth was a breath away from hers. Wait. Violet pressed a hand to his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her palm. I need to know this is real. That tomorrow morning you're not going to regret this or change your mind or... Violet, he caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. I've wanted to kiss you since the first day I walked in here, and you looked at me like I was a particularly complicated coffee order. Every day since then has been an exercise in restraint. So no, I'm not going to regret this. The only thing I'll regret is if I don't do it. Okay, she breathed. Okay. I just needed... He kissed her. Finally actually kissed her. And it was nothing like Violet had imagined and everything she'd hoped for. His mouth was warm and sure, demanding but patient, taking her apart with skill that made her knees weak. She grabbed his shirt for balance, rising on her toes to meet him, and felt his arms come around her waist, pulling her flush against him. The kiss deepened. Violet made a sound, embarrassing, needy, and felt Cameron smile against her lips. His hand slid up her spine, tangling in her hair, angling her head for better access. Time stopped. The cafe disappeared. There was only this, his mouth on hers, his hands holding her like she was precious, the taste of him that was already addictive. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cameron's eyes were dark with want. Worth the wait? He asked, his voice rough. So worth it. Violet was trembling, her hands still fisted in his shirt. We should probably... He kissed her again. Deeper this time, hungrier, his restraint fraying at the edges. Violet met him with equal fervor, months of tension and denial exploding into this moment. They stumbled backward, Cameron's back hitting the wall, Violet pressed against his chest. His hands roamed her back, her waist, learning the shape of her through her clothes. Violet, he groaned against her mouth. You're killing me. Good, she gasped, kissing along his jaw. So you've been killing me for weeks. He laughed breathlessly, catching her face between his hands. Come upstairs with me. Reality crashed back. What? My apartment. It's 2 blocks away. His thumb brushed her swollen lips. I want to keep kissing you, preferably somewhere without windows and curious passers-by. Violet's pulse hammered. This was moving fast. Too fast, probably, but she was tired of being careful, tired of letting fear make her decisions. Okay. His eyes widened. Yeah, but... She pressed a finger to his lips. Just kissing. I need time for anything more. Just kissing, he agreed immediately. I can work with that. They grabbed their things, Violet completely forgetting about Natalie's keys. Cameron's hand found hers as they walked, their fingers threading together with easy intimacy. At his apartment building, sleek, modern, exactly what she'd expected, Violet felt nerves flutter in her stomach. Having second thoughts? Cameron asked, reading her expression. 10th thoughts, maybe. We can go slower. No. She squeezed his hand. I'm done going slow. I'm just nervous. He raised their joined hands, kissing her knuckles. Me too. You're never nervous. I'm nervous about everything with you. He unlocked his door, leading her inside. Nervous I'll mess this up. Nervous you'll realize I'm not worth the risk. Nervous that... Violet kissed him, cutting off his words. This kiss was softer, reassuring, saying everything she couldn't quite articulate. When she pulled back, Cameron looked dazed. What was that for? For being honest, for being you. She smiled. For having an excellent mouth. He groaned. You can't say things like that. Why not? Because I'm trying to be a gentleman, and just kissing is becoming a very difficult promise to keep. Violet laughed, feeling powerful and desired, and maybe, just maybe, ready to stop being afraid. Then stop being a gentleman, she whispered. Cameron's eyes darkened. Dangerous words, sweetheart. I'm feeling dangerous. He pulled her close, his forehead against hers. Not tonight. When we cross that line, I want you completely certain. No fear, no hesitation. I am certain. Tomorrow you might not be. And I need you to be sure tomorrow too. And the day after. And... She kissed him again. Softer this time. You're a better person than I give you credit for. Stick around. You might discover all kinds of surprising things. They spent the next 2 hours on his couch, kissing like teenagers, learning each other. It was perfect and frustrating, and exactly what Violet needed. When he finally drove her home near midnight, her lips were swollen and her heart was completely, irrevocably compromised. She was falling in love with Cameron Brooks, and for the first time that didn't terrify her. The next 3 weeks were the happiest Violet could remember. Cameron became a constant in her life. Mornings at the cafe, dinners at his apartment or hers, stolen kisses between customers, his hand finding hers at every opportunity. The shoulder kisses continued, each one still making her shiver, each one followed by his satisfied smile. They hadn't slept together yet, not for lack of wanting. God, the wanting was intense, but because Cameron insisted on taking his time, making sure she was completely ready. You're making me crazy, Violet complained one evening, sprawled across his couch after another marathon makeout session that had left them both breathless and frustrated. Good crazy or bad crazy? He was grinning, entirely too pleased with himself. The worst crazy. Patience is a virtue, sweetheart. I'm not feeling virtuous. He laughed, pulling her back against him. Soon, I promise, when the time is right. Violet was starting to suspect the time would never feel perfectly right, but she appreciated his care, appreciated that he valued her readiness over his own desire. It made her fall harder, faster, until she was so far gone she couldn't remember what life had been like before Cameron Brooks walked through her cafe door. Then everything shattered. It was a Tuesday morning. Cameron was at his usual table, video call running with someone from his office. Violet was restocking pastries, half listening to his conversation while mentally planning the new seasonal menu. The expansion timeline looks good, Cameron was saying. Once we finalize with Davidson Construction, we can move forward on the Portland branch. Violet's hands froze. Davidson Construction. No, it couldn't be. Marcus Davidson's firm has the best reputation for commercial builds, Cameron continued, oblivious to Violet's growing horror. I know they're pricey, but the quality is worth... The tray of croissants crashed to the floor. Cameron's head whipped around. Violet? She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The cafe walls were closing in, her vision tunneling. Marcus Davidson. Cameron was doing business with Marcus. I have to go, she heard herself say distantly. Violet. What? I have to go. Right now. She was already moving toward the back room, her hands shaking so badly she could barely walk straight. Cameron was beside her in seconds, his hand on her arm. "Hey, what's wrong? Talk to me." She jerked away like his touch burned. "Don't." "Violet Davidson Construction." Her voice was hollow. "Marcus Davidson. That's who you're working with?" Confusion crossed his face. "Yes, but—" Understanding dawned, followed by horror. "Oh God, that's him. The ex who—" "Get out." "Violet, I didn't know—" "Get out of my cafe. Now." "Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," her voice cracked, tears threatening. "You're working with him, you're connected to him, you're just like—" "Don't." Cameron's voice turned sharp. "Don't finish that sentence. I am nothing like him. All you rich, powerful men, you're all connected, aren't you? All in the same circles, making the same deals. I was stupid to think you were different." Pain flashed across his face. "That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair." Violet's hands were fists at her sides, her whole body shaking. "I told you about him. I told you what he did to me. And you're doing business with him." "I didn't make the connection. His company bid on the project. They had the best proposal." "So cancel it." Cameron's jaw clenched. "It's not that simple. Contracts are signed, deposits paid. Then I guess we know where your priorities are." Her laugh was bitter. "Money over everything, right? Typical." "That's not— Violet, you're not being rational. Don't you dare tell me I'm being irrational." Fury and pain warred in her chest. "Get out. We're done." "We are not done." He stepped closer, his expression fierce. "I know you're scared and hurt, and this is a terrible coincidence, but we are not throwing away what we have because there is no we." The words tasted like ash. "There never really was. I was just convenient entertainment until—" "Stop." His voice was quiet, but hard as steel. "You don't believe that. You're lashing out because you're scared. I'm scared because you've proven I was right to be." Tears spilled over despite her best efforts. "Every instinct told me not to trust you, not to let you in. And I did anyway, and now—" Her voice broke. She turned away, pressing her palms against the counter. Cameron's reflection appeared in the espresso machine behind her. "I will cancel the contract." She spun around. "What?" "Davidson Construction. I'll cancel. Find another firm. I don't care if it costs more or delays the project." His eyes held hers, intense and unwavering. "I'll do it because you matter more than any business deal, but I need you to understand something." He moved closer but didn't touch her. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I would never deliberately hurt you like this, and yes, I'm canceling the contract, but not because you demanded it. I'm doing it because I love you, and having any connection to the man who broke you is unacceptable to me." Violet's breath caught. "You— What?" "I love you." He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "I'm in love with you, Violet. Have been for weeks, and I will prove I'm different from him, from every man who's hurt you. But you have to meet me halfway. You have to choose to trust, instead of letting fear win." I can't." She was crying fully now, confused and overwhelmed. "Take whatever time you need." He headed for the door, then paused. "But know this, I'm not giving up on us. Not now. Not ever." Then he was gone, and Violet slid down the counter to the floor, surrounded by scattered croissants, and let herself fall apart. 3 days. 3 days without Cameron walking through her door. 3 days of coffee that tasted like water, and mornings that felt endless. Violet told herself it was better this way, safer. She'd been right to end things before they got too serious, before he could hurt her the way Marcus had. Except Cameron had already hurt her, not through betrayal, but through absence. She missed him with an intensity that made her chest ache. "You look terrible," Natalie said on day 4, setting a muffin in front of Violet with the determination of someone staging an intervention. "Eat, then talk." "I'm fine." "You're miserable." "There's a difference." Natalie slid into the chair across from her. "He didn't know, Vi. You know he didn't know. It doesn't matter. It absolutely matters. He made a business decision before he even met you, and you're punishing him for it." Violet's hands tightened around her coffee cup. "You don't understand. I understand you're scared. I understand Marcus destroyed your ability to trust. But Cameron isn't Marcus." Natalie's voice gentled. "He's the guy who memorized your coffee order, who jumps counters when you fall, who looks at you like you hung the moon. Stop. Who told you he loves you and then walked away to give you space instead of pushing." Natalie reached across the table, squeezing Violet's hand. How many guys like that exist, Vi? How many would choose you over a profitable business deal? Violet's vision blurred. I was so mean to him. Yeah, you were. You were also terrified and reacting from old wounds. He gets that. How do you know? Because Julian told me. Cameron's been a wreck since Tuesday, barely sleeping, can't focus on work. Sound familiar? Before Violet could respond, the cafe door opened. Julian Hayes walked in, his usually easy expression serious. Natalie, Violet. He nodded to each of them. Mind if I sit? Dread pooled in Violet's stomach. Is Cameron okay? Depends on your definition of okay. Julian pulled out a chair. He cancelled the Davidson construction contract yesterday. Violet's breath caught. He did? Paid a substantial penalty to break the agreement. Found a different firm, more expensive, longer timeline, but they have no connection to your ex. Julian's expression was steady, not quite disapproving, but close. Cost him about $2 million in fees and delays. $2 million, Violet repeated faintly. He said it was worth it. Julian leaned forward. Look, I'm Cameron's friend, so I'm biased. But I've known him for 15 years. He doesn't do grand gestures. He's practical, strategic, calculated, until you. Julian, he told me he loves you. First time I've heard him say that about anyone. Julian stood. What you do with that information is up to you. But if you're waiting for proof he's different, I think you just got it. He left as quietly as he'd arrived. Violet sat frozen, Julian's words echoing in her mind. $2 million. Cameron had sacrificed $2 million because having any connection to Marcus was unacceptable. Oh God, she whispered. What have I done? Nothing that can't be fixed, Natalie said immediately. Go, right now. He's probably at his office. What if he doesn't want to see me? Then you'll grovel until he does. Move. 20 minutes later, Violet stood outside Cameron's office building, her heart hammering. She'd barely slept, hadn't showered, was wearing yesterday's jeans and one of Cameron's sweatshirts she'd stolen weeks ago. She looked like a disaster. She felt like one too. The receptionist directed her to the 15th floor. Violet took the elevator up, each second feeling like an eternity. Cameron's office door was open. He sat behind his desk, shirt rumpled, tie loosened, looking exhausted in a way that made her chest ache. She knocked softly. He looked up, and the naked hope in his eyes nearly broke her. Violet, I'm sorry. The words tumbled out. I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve what I said, how I treated you. I was scared and I lashed out and... Come here. His voice was rough. She crossed the office on shaking legs. Cameron met her halfway, pulling her into his arms with enough force to steal her breath. She buried her face in his chest, breathing him in. I'm sorry, she said again, muffled against his shirt. I know. His hand smoothed down her hair. I'm sorry too, for not making the connection, for hurting you even accidentally. Julian told me. About the contract. She pulled back to look at him. $2 million, Cameron. That's insane. It's money. I'll make it back. He cupped her face between his palms. But you? You're irreplaceable. Fresh tears spilled over. I love you. His breath caught. What? I love you? I'm terrified and probably going to mess this up 1,000 more times, but I love you, and I'm choosing to trust you. To trust us. Cameron's smile was blinding. Say it again. I love you. He kissed her then, deep and claiming and full of everything they'd both been holding back. Violet melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Cameron rested his forehead against hers. Come home with me, he whispered. Now? Right now, I need... His voice roughened. I need you, Violet. All of you. No more waiting. She looked into his eyes and saw everything reflected back. Love, desire, commitment, hope. Yes, she breathed. Take me home. Cameron's apartment had never felt so charged with possibility. They made it through the door barely. His mouth found hers again the moment it closed, backing her against the wall with an urgency that stole her breath. Violet's hands roamed his shoulders, his chest, relearning the feel of him after days of absence. I missed you, she gasped between kisses. So much. Never again. His lips traced down her throat. Never walking away from you again. Promise? Promise. He pulled back. his eyes dark with desire but also something gentler. "Violet, are you sure? We don't have to—" She kissed him, cutting off his words. "I'm sure. I'm ready. I want this. Want you." His smile was tender. "Thank God. Because wanting you and not having you has been torture." He took her hand, leading her to his bedroom. Violet's heart raced, part nerves, part anticipation, all want. The room was bathed in afternoon light, making everything soft and golden. Cameron turned to face her, his hands gentle as they cupped her face. "I love you," he said quietly. "Need you to know that. This isn't just... It means something to me." "I know." She pressed her palm to his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath. "It means something to me, too." He kissed her slowly this time, reverently, his hands mapping her body through her clothes like he was memorizing her. Violet felt treasured, cherished, like she was something precious he'd been waiting for. When his fingers found the hem of her sweatshirt, his sweatshirt, he paused. "Can I?" She nodded, raising her arms. He pulled it off carefully, his gaze tracking over her bare skin with an intensity that made her shiver. "You're beautiful," he breathed. "So damn beautiful." "Cameron, let me." His fingers traced her collarbone, down her sternum, feather-light and devastating. "Let me show you. Let me worship every inch of you." And he did, with hands that trembled slightly despite his confidence, with kisses that made her gasp and arch, with whispered words against her skin that made tears prick her eyes because they were so tender, so full of devotion. Violet had been with men before, had thought she understood physical intimacy. This was different. This was Cameron learning her body like it was sacred text, finding every sensitive spot, every place that made her breath catch, taking his time despite the obvious strain of his control. When her hands fumbled with his shirt buttons, he helped, shrugging out of it with easy grace. Violet's mouth went dry at the sight, all toned muscle and warm skin that begged to be touched. "You're staring," he said, amused. "You're worth staring at." She traced the defined lines of his abdomen, feeling them contract under her touch. "I've been wanting to touch you like this for weeks." His laugh was rough. "The feeling's mutual, sweetheart." They fell onto the bed together, a tangle of limbs and desperate kisses. Cameron's weight pressed her into the mattress, solid and real and everything she'd been denying herself. "Tell me if anything's too much," he murmured against her throat. "Tell me what you need. You. Just you." The rest of their clothes disappeared in a blur of hands and heat, and then there was nothing between them. Just skin against skin, hearts beating in synchrony. Cameron paused, hovering above her, his eyes searching hers. "Last chance to change your mind." "Not a chance." She pulled him down, kissing him with all the emotion she couldn't quite put into words. "I'm yours. Completely. Mine," he agreed roughly. "And I'm yours." He moved then slowly, carefully, watching her face for any sign of discomfort. Violet gasped at the sensation, overwhelming and perfect and right. "Okay?" His voice was strained with the effort of holding back. "More than okay." She wrapped her legs around him, pulling him deeper. "Don't hold back. I want all of you." Something in him broke free. The restraint dissolved into passion, careful transformed into claiming. They moved together with an intensity that felt inevitable, like they'd been building to this moment since the first time their eyes met. Violet lost herself in the sensation, in the slide of skin, the taste of his mouth, the sound of her name on his lips like a prayer. Cameron took her apart piece by piece and put her back together as someone new, someone brave enough to love without armor. When pleasure crested through her, she cried out his name, her hands fisting in the sheets. Cameron followed moments later, his face buried in her neck, her name breaking from his lips. The aftermath was gentle. Cameron rolled to his side, pulling her with him, their bodies still tangled together. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her spine, soothing and possessive at once. "You okay?" he asked softly. Violet laughed, the sound breathless and joy-filled. "I'm perfect. I know." He kissed her forehead, her nose, her mouth. "I know, sweetheart." They lay there for a long time, neither wanting to move, neither wanting to break the spell. Violet felt safe here, wrapped in Cameron's arms, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." His arms tightened around her. "And I'm never letting you go." "Promise?" Promise. Later, when shadows lengthened across the room, they made love again. Slower this time. Tender. Exploring each other, with the leisure of people who knew they had time. All the time in the world. Violet traced the scar above Cameron's eyebrow, the one she'd noticed their first day. How'd you get this? Bar fight in college. Some guy said something crude about a girl I was dating. I punched him. He got in one good hit before Julian pulled us apart. My hero. She kissed the scar gently. Hardly. I'm just a guy who got lucky enough to find you. We both got lucky. Yeah. His smile was soft, content. We really did. As night fell, they stayed wrapped together, talking and kissing and learning each other in ways that had nothing to do with physical intimacy. Violet told him about her dreams for the cafe, her fear of expanding because it might mean losing control. Cameron talked about the pressure of expectations, of being the youngest son who had to prove himself constantly, of building an empire because he didn't know how else to show his worth. You're worth everything, Violet said fiercely. Success or not, money or not. You're worth everything, Cameron. His eyes shone with emotion. So are you. Never forget that. They fell asleep tangled together, hearts aligned, walls finally demolished. For the first time in 3 years, Violet slept without nightmares. She slept instead, dreaming of the future. Violet woke to the smell of coffee and something burning. She sat up, disoriented, taking in Cameron's bedroom in morning light. The sheets beside her were still warm but empty. Smoke detector beeping drifted from the kitchen, followed by creative cursing. Grinning, she grabbed Cameron's discarded shirt from the floor. It fell to mid-thigh and padded barefoot toward the chaos. The scene in the kitchen was spectacular. Cameron stood at the stove wearing only pajama bottoms, his hair disheveled, glaring at a pan of what might once have been eggs. The smoke detector wailed overhead. Burnt toast sat abandoned on the counter. Need help? Violet asked, leaning against the doorframe. Cameron spun around, relief flooding his face. Thank God, I was trying to make you breakfast. It's going poorly. I can see that. She moved to silence the smoke detector, then surveyed the damage. What happened? I got distracted looking at you sleeping and forgot I was cooking. He pulled her against him, nuzzling her neck. You're very distracting in my bed. Smooth recovery. I thought so. He kissed that spot on her shoulder, making her shiver predictably. Morning, beautiful. Morning. She turned in his arms, wrapping hers around his neck. For the record, I don't need fancy breakfasts. No? I just need you. Preferably without burned food. His laugh rumbled through his chest. How about I order in and we go back to bed? Best idea you've had all morning. They spent the day tangled together, ordering takeout, talking about everything and nothing. Violet learned Cameron was terrified of spiders, loved terrible action movies, and could quote entire episodes of cooking shows, despite being hopeless in the kitchen. Cameron discovered Violet sang in the shower, organized her books by color instead of author, and had a secret addiction to romance novels she kept hidden under her bed. You read romance? He was delighted, holding up a well-worn paperback with a shirtless man on the cover. Give that back. Not a chance. This is incredible. He flipped through it. Does the Duke finally admit his feelings? Cameron Brooks, if you spoil that ending. He kissed her, cutting off her threat. Your secret's safe with me. Though I have to say, reality's better than fiction. You think you're a romance hero? I think we're writing our own story. He pulled her onto his lap. And it's my favorite one. The following weeks fell into a pattern that felt like coming home. Cameron still appeared at the Gilded Bean every morning, but now he kissed her properly instead of just stealing shoulder kisses. Customers got used to seeing them wrapped around each other behind the counter. Get a room, Natalie would call out cheerfully. We have a room, Cameron would reply. Several, actually. Want to see them? Violet would elbow him in the ribs while trying not to laugh. Evenings were spent at his place or hers, cooking together, or ordering in after Cameron inevitably created a disaster. They fell asleep, tangled together, woke up the same way. The shoulder kisses continued throughout the day, each one making Violet shiver, each one followed by Cameron's satisfied grin. You really love doing that, don't you? She asked one morning after he'd snuck up behind her at the espresso machine. Love watching you react. His arms came around her waist. Still get the same shiver every time. Because you're predictable. Because you're mine. The possessiveness should have annoyed her. Instead, it made her feel cherished, claimed in the best possible way. 1 month became 2. 2 became 3. The cafe thrived, Cameron's business flourished, their relationship deepened into something solid and real. Julian and Natalie became inseparable, their friendship evolving into something more that had both Violet and Cameron placing bets on when they'd finally admit it. $20 says Julian cracks first, Cameron said one evening. You're on. Natalie's been in love with him for weeks. They were both wrong. Julian and Natalie announced they were dating on the same day, having apparently discussed it and decided to make it official together. That's so boring, Violet complained. That's so healthy, Cameron corrected, then paused. Are we boring? Violet looked at him sprawled on her couch, wearing the reading glasses that still made her weak-kneed, his hand absently playing with her hair. Not even a little bit. Good. He pulled her down for a kiss. Because I plan to keep you thoroughly entertained for the next 60 years. 60 years? At least. Maybe 80 if we're lucky. Her heart stuttered. That's a long time. Not long enough. His expression turned serious. I'm in this, Violet. All the way. Forever. Me too, she whispered. All the way. 3 months after their reconciliation, Violet woke up in Cameron's bed, wearing nothing but his t-shirt, her hair a mess, feeling absurdly happy. Cameron was already awake, propped on one elbow, watching her with an expression that made her chest tight. What? She asked sleepily. Just memorizing this. You. Here. Happy. He traced her jawline. Want to remember it forever. Sap. Your sap. My sap, she agreed, pulling him down for a kiss. Later that morning at the cafe, as Cameron stole his customary shoulder kiss and Violet melted predictably, Natalie announced they needed to talk about the holiday party. What holiday party? Violet asked. The one we're throwing. Here. In 3 weeks. Natalie was already pulling out her phone, showing them Pinterest boards. It'll be perfect. Customers, friends, family. Very festive. Nat. Already sent invitations. Non-negotiable. Cameron laughed at Violet's expression. Looks like we're having a party. This is why I can't have nice things, Violet muttered. But 3 weeks later, standing in her cafe decorated with twinkling lights and evergreen garland, surrounded by people she loved, with Cameron's arm around her waist and his lips brushing her temple, Violet had to admit Natalie was right. It was perfect. What she didn't know was that in his pocket, Cameron carried a small velvet box, and he was just waiting for the right moment. 6 months after their reconciliation, on an ordinary Tuesday evening, Cameron knew it was time. They were at his apartment after closing the cafe. Violet stood at the kitchen sink washing dishes, barefoot in one of his old college t-shirts and leggings, her hair piled messily on top of her head. She was humming something off-key, completely unself-conscious, and Cameron's chest ached with how much he loved her. This was the moment. Not at some fancy restaurant or choreographed event, just her, being herself, in his space that had become their space. He pulled the small velvet box from where he'd been carrying it for weeks, his heart hammering. Violet must have sensed his movement because she glanced over her shoulder. Everything okay? Yeah. His voice came out rough. Just thinking. About how I want to spend the rest of my life watching you do dishes in my kitchen. She laughed, turning back to the sink. That's a weird fantasy. Not a fantasy. A plan. He moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, pressing a kiss to that spot on her shoulder that always made her shiver. Cameron. Her breath hitched as the familiar tremor ran through her. I love making you do that, he murmured against her skin. Love that after all this time, you still react the same way. It's your fault for being predictable. Predictable can be good. He turned her gently in his arms, his hand steady on her waist even though his pulse was racing. Means you know what to expect. Means consistency. Reliability. Violet's brow furrowed slightly, picking up on something in his tone. Where's this going? Instead of answering, Cameron stepped back and lowered himself to one knee. Violet's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes going wide. Oh my God. Violet Hayes. He opened the box, revealing a simple platinum band with a single diamond that caught the kitchen light. I had a whole speech planned, something poetic about coffee and second chances and how you changed my life. But standing here, Looking at you in my shirt doing dishes and humming off-key, all I can think is that this is what I want. Every day. For the rest of my life. Tears were already streaming down her face. I want to wake up next to you every morning, Cameron continued, his own voice thick with emotion. Want to burn breakfast while getting distracted by how beautiful you look sleeping. Want to steal kisses at the cafe and argue with you about your terrible organizational system, and watch you roll your eyes at my terrible jokes. They are terrible, she managed through tears and laughter. I want to spend 60 years making you shiver with shoulder kisses. Want to hold you when you're scared and celebrate with you when you're happy and just be there for everything. The boring and the exciting and everything in between. He paused, his throat tight. So will you marry me? Will you let me be predictable and consistent and yours for the rest of our lives? Violet's hands were shaking as she reached down, pulling him to his feet. You're not supposed to be on your knees in the kitchen. That wasn't the plan. Plans change. He cupped her face, wiping away tears with his thumbs. This feels right, you here now. It does, she whispered. It feels perfect. So is that a yes? Of course it's a yes. She pulled him down, kissing him with everything she felt, love and joy and gratitude and wonder. Yes, 1,000 times yes. His hands trembled slightly as he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for her. Which it had. He'd spent 2 weeks working with a jeweler to get it exactly right. Violet stared at it, fresh tears spilling over. It's beautiful. Not as beautiful as you. He kissed her again, deeper this time. Going to marry you, Violet Hayes. Going to make you Violet Brooks and wake up next to you every day and drive you crazy with my shoulder obsession. I'm counting on it. She traced his jaw, her touch reverent. I love you so much. Sometimes I can't believe you're real. That this is real. Believe it. He lifted her easily, setting her on the counter, stepping between her legs. Because I'm not going anywhere, ever. Promise? Promise. He kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. You're stuck with me now. Best thing I've ever been stuck with. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped around each other in his kitchen, the dishes forgotten, the ring glinting on her finger. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, their future stretched ahead, bright and certain and theirs. Later, when Violet called Natalie to share the news, her friend's shriek nearly deafened them both. Finally! I've been waiting for this for months. Natalie's joy was palpable even through the phone. I already have Pinterest boards. We're doing this right. Of course you do, Violet said, laughing. Can I tell Julian? He probably already knows. Cameron tells him everything. This is going to be the best wedding ever. I'm thinking spring... Nat, let me enjoy being engaged for 5 minutes before you start planning. Fine, 5 minutes. Then we're looking at venues. When Violet hung up, Cameron pulled her back against his chest, his arms wrapping around her from behind. His chin rested on her shoulder. Regret saying yes yet? He asked. Not even a little. She laced her fingers through his, admiring the way the ring caught the light. You? My only regret is not doing this sooner. He pressed a kiss to her shoulder, smiling when she shivered. But we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time. The rest of our lives, Violet repeated softly, testing out the words. They felt good. Right. Perfect. That night they celebrated their engagement the best way they knew how, tangled together in his bed, showing each other with touches and kisses and whispered words exactly what forever meant. And for the first time since Marcus had broken her heart 3 years ago, Violet believed completely in happy endings, because she was living one. 1 year and 6 months later, Violet Brooks woke to her husband kissing her shoulder. Still works, Cameron murmured against her skin, satisfaction in his voice as she shivered. Even pregnant. Especially pregnant, Violet corrected, rolling to face him with some difficulty thanks to her 5-month baby bump. Hormones make everything more intense. His hand found her rounded stomach, palm spreading protectively. How's our little troublemaker this morning? As if in answer, the baby kicked. Cameron's face lit up with wonder that never got old. Active, Violet said. Takes after you. Takes after you. Already keeping me up at night with all the moving around. You love it. I really do. He leaned down, pressing a kiss to her belly. Morning, baby. Your mom and I are very excited to meet you. Though we're still arguing about names. We're not naming our child after your college mascot. Huskies is a perfectly respectable name. For a dog, maybe. Cameron laughed, pulling her closer, or as close as the bump allowed. Marriage suited him. He'd relaxed into it with the same easy confidence he brought to everything else. But there was softness now, too. A gentleness that made Violet fall more in love every day. They'd married 6 months after the proposal, in a small ceremony at the cafe with only family and close friends. Natalie had cried through the entire thing. Julian had given a speech that was both hilarious and touching. And when Cameron had promised to love and cherish her, to steal shoulder kisses for the rest of their lives, Violet had believed him completely. The pregnancy had been a surprise, a wonderful, terrifying surprise. Violet had spent a week in denial before Natalie had dragged her to buy a test. "You've been crying at coffee commercials," her friend had pointed out. "And you hate coffee right now. Connect the dots, babe." When the test came back positive, Violet had stared at it in the cafe bathroom, her mind blank with shock. Cameron's reaction when she told him had been everything. 5 seconds of stunned silence, then pure joy. He'd picked her up, spun her carefully, then immediately set her down, panicking that he might have hurt the baby. "I'm not made of glass," she'd laughed through happy tears. "You're carrying something precious. I'm allowed to be careful." Now, lying in bed on a lazy Sunday morning, Violet traced the line of his jaw. "I never thought I'd have this." "What?" "This kind of happiness. This kind of life." She pressed her hand over his where it rested on her stomach. "A year ago I was convinced love was something that only existed in books, that real life was messier, more disappointing." "It is messier," Cameron said. "You've seen my attempts at cooking. It's a disaster. But it's our disaster." "Exactly." He kissed her softly. "Our messy, imperfect, absolutely perfect life." The baby kicked again, harder this time. They both laughed. "Already has opinions," Violet said. "Definitely takes after you then." At the cafe later, Violet still worked mornings despite Natalie's protests that she should be resting. Customers had gotten used to seeing Cameron appear around 10 o'clock, bringing her decaf coffee and whatever craving she'd texted him about. Today it was pickles and ice cream. "That's disgusting," Natalie observed as Violet happily ate both simultaneously. "That's pregnancy," Violet corrected. Cameron arrived right on schedule, the requested items in hand. He kissed her hello, properly, not just the shoulder, though that came next, and made her sit down while he chatted with the morning regulars. This was their routine now, their life, built from coffee and second chances and love that had survived doubt and fear and come out stronger. Julian appeared with Natalie's lunch. They'd been dating for over a year now, though both swore they were taking it slow. The 4 of them sat together, laughing over Julian's latest courtroom disaster, and Natalie's plans for the baby shower she was throwing, whether Violet wanted one or not. "You're having a shower," Natalie said firmly. "Non-negotiable. Everything with you is non-negotiable. That's why we're friends." That evening, back at the apartment, their apartment now, Violet having moved in the week after the wedding, Cameron found her in the nursery they'd been slowly putting together. She stood at the window, one hand on her stomach, looking out at the city lights. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his hands covering hers on the bump. "Just thinking about how far we've come. How scared I was that first day you walked into the cafe. Scared of me. Scared of what you represented. Scared of wanting something I thought would hurt me." She leaned back against him. "Scared of being happy. And now? Now I'm just scared I'll mess up this parenting thing." Cameron laughed softly. "We'll mess it up together, balance each other out. You'll be the sensible one. I'll be the one who lets them eat ice cream for breakfast." "Absolutely not. See, already balancing me out." The baby kicked and they both felt it. A reminder of the future growing between them, of the family they were building. "I love you," Violet whispered, "for being patient, for proving me wrong about everything I thought I knew, for being exactly who you are. I love you too." He kissed her shoulder, felt her shiver even now, even after all this time. "For letting me in, for taking a chance, for being the best thing that ever walked through my door." They stood there as the city sparkled below, wrapped in each other, feeling their baby move, living the happy ending Violet had stopped believing in. Years ago she'd sworn off love, off risk, off men in expensive suits with devastating smiles. Then Cameron Brooks had walked into the Gilded Bean and changed everything, and Violet had discovered that second chances were real, that love could be trusted, that happy endings weren't just for books. They were for brave people who chose to try again despite their fear. She'd chosen bravery and found everything she'd ever needed. Leave your comment and share this story with someone special. It truly helps us keep bringing new stories to you. And if you want to follow every chapter of this emotional journey, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Your support makes all the difference.